Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Canadian Research Security Roundup. We're so glad you could join us again for our new video format. From all of us here, a very, very spooky Friday to all of you.
That's right, it is Halloween. And oh boy, do we have some truly scary stories lined up from the world of research security this week. Seriously, we've got espionage, covert ops, even some academic horror stories. So, grab your candy and let's dive right in. All right, first up, let's get into what we're calling spooky tech and covert ops. And trust me, the name fits. We're talking about the shadowy world of ghost companies and phantom technologies that are basically haunting our global supply chains. And we are kicking things off with a story that is, frankly, just shocking. The Globe and Mail is reporting on this, get this, Canadian-made technology is turning up in Russian weapons on the battlefield in Ukraine. So, yeah. The massive question is, how on earth did it get there?
So, how did this even happen? Well, a joint report has basically uncovered this whole illicit funnel. You've got these Hong Kong-based shell companies, we're talking total ghost companies, right? Acting as the middlemen. They swoop in, buy up sensitive Canadian electronics and aerospace parts, and then it all gets sneakily rerouted to Russia, completely bypassing sanctions. And the proof? It's undeniable. They're finding it in debris on the battlefield, and it's all backed up by Russian customs data. So now the report is basically screaming at Ottawa to sanction these intermediaries and actually prosecute the people responsible.
Okay, so we've talked about ghost companies, but how about phantom systems? For this next one, we're going deep, like literally deep under the Arctic Ocean. And what's lurking down there? I'm not kidding, it's something straight out of a spy novel. The Washington Post is reporting that Russia has secretly built this massive undersea surveillance system. They're calling it Harmony, and its job? Pretty simple, really. Create a protective shield for its nuclear submarine fleet. This whole thing is a perfect example of just how hard it is to enforce sanctions. Russia used a whole web of front companies to secretly buy up all this high-tech Western gear. We're talking advanced sonar, drones, fiber optics, and built a giant sensor network on the seabed, all to spot U.S. subs. And hey, these spooky threats aren't just lurking underwater. ESET just uncovered a new campaign from North Korea's Lazarus Group, and they're calling it Operation Dream Job. The name is kind of perfect. Here's how this little digital ghost story plays out. The attackers pretend to be recruiters. They send out these really tempting fake job offers to folks working at European drone companies. Then they send a file, maybe something that looks like a normal tool like Notepad++, but it's been Trojanized. The target opens it and boom, a custom Trojan is deployed. And just like that, the hackers are in, stealing secrets, all to boost North Korea's own drone programs. But you know what? Not all these spy stories are like Mission Impossible. Some of them are, well, more like a sitcom. Check this out. According to Les Numerics, a team in China was trying to reverse engineer one of those insanely complex ASML chip-making machines. And what happened? They broke it. Like, couldn't put it back together, broke it. So what did they do? They had to make the super embarrassing phone call to ASML for tech support. Totally blew their own cover. It's actually a pretty great reminder that some of this tech is just so incredibly complicated, you can't just, copy it. So with all these threats flying around, you can bet countries aren't just sitting back and watching. No way. All around the world, nations are starting to build what you could call digital walls. They're rolling out new policies and forging new alliances, all to protect themselves. And believe me, these national security worries are getting really close to home. I mean, they could literally be sitting in your living room as we speak. Ever stop to think, could your home Wi-Fi router actually be a national security threat? Yeah, I'm serious. The Independent reports that U.S. federal agencies are actually backing a potential ban on TP-Link, one of the biggest router brands out there, all because of security fears. And this is just one piece of a huge global puzzle. We're seeing the US, Japan, and South Korea signing these technology prosperity deals to align on things like AI and chips. The EU is looking to bake research security right into its laws by 2026. And then you've got Australia, where people are getting really worried that their military research is just a sitting duck. So the pressure is on, everywhere. Okay, but there's a flip side to building all these walls, and it's a big one. The OECD is basically sounding the alarm here. They're warning that this laser focus on security is starting to hurt the one thing that really fuels innovation: global scientific teamwork. The big fear is that we're splintering global science into these separate, competing camps. The OECD actually has a great name for this tension. They call it science friction. And that's exactly what it is, right? It's this clash between the absolute need to protect our sensitive research and the core principle of open global collaboration that science has always thrived on. And if we get that balance wrong, well, it could really slow us down on tackling the huge challenges. We're talking climate change, future pandemics, you name it.
All right, so that's the big picture globally. But what does all this look like right here in Canada? Let's zoom in a bit with our News from the North segment.
This is a really interesting one from the Narwhal. It turns out our spy agency, CSIS, is now allowed to share intel directly with major corporations. Apparently, this all started with a lobbying push from TC Energy, arguing they needed help to protect critical infrastructure. Now, on one hand, supporters are saying this is crucial for our economic security. But on the other, critics are really worried it could be used to shut down legitimate protests and, it raises some pretty serious questions about civil liberties. It's a tricky one.
And speaking of the economy, here's a number that is genuinely frightening. The Montreal Gazette is reporting that international student applications to universities in Quebec have dropped by 46%. 46! The universities are basically sounding the alarm, warning that these restrictive policies are causing a massive brain drain. They're losing the global talent that makes up half of their research staff. That's a huge threat to the future of innovation in the province.
Okay, wow. That was a lot of heavy, spooky stuff. But I promise it's not all doom and gloom here in the Great White North. Let's switch gears and talk about some stories that are a little less chilling and a lot more hopeful. So first up, CBC News reports that Acadia University out in Nova Scotia is opening Canada's very first dedicated tick breeding and research facility. Okay, fine. Maybe a tick breeding facility is still a little creepy for Halloween, but hey, it's incredibly important work for fighting things like Lyme disease. And then there's this. Canada's National Observer says that the need for Arctic security, plus the massive energy hunger of the AI boom, is finally pushing us to tap into our huge potential for geothermal energy. That's clean, reliable power just waiting for us. For our last section today, I want to bring it all back to the people at the center of this world, the researchers. Because at the end of the day, they're the ones in the crosshairs, but they're also the ones who can be the heroes. And let me tell you about a modern academic horror story that the scientist has been reporting on. Just imagine for a second. You're a researcher, you're scrolling online, and you find a new paper published with your name on it. Except you've never seen it before, you didn't write it. That's academic impersonation, and it's becoming a total nightmare for scientists.
So how does this even happen? Well, these impersonators use fake emails to submit bogus research under the name of a real, respected scientist. It gets even worse. Sometimes when they're caught, they'll launch smear campaigns against the very person whose identity they stole. And the real kicker is, the academic journals just seem totally unprepared to deal with this. So you have these researchers who are absolutely terrified that their reputation, which they've spent their entire career building, could be destroyed. But I don't want to end on that note. Let's end with a story of pure innovation. For years, we've had this massive global problem. China has a stranglehold on rare earth elements, controlling a whopping 92% of the refining process. And we need this stuff for everything. EVs, wind turbines, you name it. We're talking about a market worth more than 100 billion euros. But now, a single researcher might have just changed the entire game. Evidence Network is reporting on Zhenping Wang at the University of Minnesota. She's developed a new kind of super magnet made from iron nitride. And the key part? No rare earths required. Zero. This one invention could literally be the key for the West to break free from that dependency, to completely reshape supply chains and build a much more secure future. It's just an amazing reminder of how one person's idea can tackle a massive global problem. And that brings us to our final spooky question for you today. We've talked about ghost companies, phantom tech, and academic horror stories, and we've seen all these digital walls going up around the world. So I'll leave you with this thought to chew on. With all these walls being built, is the very idea of open global science becoming a ghost of the past? Something to think about. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week.